Many of you may not have noticed, amidst all of the chaos and the pandemic and the National Guard deployment and the Navy potentially sending out hospital ships, that there was actually a Democratic primary election last night, a couple different states. Now, Ohio shut theirs down, but many other states carried on. And voter turnout, at least early reports, was psychotically low. One person tweeting that in a low voter turnout mayoral election in Chicago, they could expect 30 to 40,000 votes in the first hour, and they only got 10,000 for the Democratic primary race. Regardless of the voter turnout, no one seemed to be covering this, like, for the most part. Typically, when there's a Democratic primary election, they track it on the news, they talk about it, they speculate. But the other day, it's kind of funny, all I really saw was coronavirus all day. I was turning on the news and I'm like, where's the results? Normally they'll have a timer and it says, polls close at this time and we're speculating who's going to win. Nope. Coronavirus. Well, as many of you could have probably guessed, Joe Biden absolutely crushed Bernie Sanders. And Bernie is apparently saying he's going to assess his campaign. Dare I say, by the time you watch this video, he may have already dropped out of the race and Joe Biden will be the nominee. But we'll see. Because maybe Bernie won't give up. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard's still in the race. But Donald Trump also just secured his position as the presumptive Republican nominee by crossing that threshold he needed to reach. We'll go through those numbers. But first, Biden shuts down Bernie Sanders once again in primary night marred by coronavirus. Now, what I find particularly significant about this story is, look, regardless of the pandemic stuff, I would have been talking about Bernie and Biden's race anyway. But we are now seeing the Democrats potentially, they're saying there could be a bunch of lawsuits. All across Twitter, the progressives were saying, no, we refuse to accept this. They should have been postponed. How can you tell people to stay home, distance themselves socially, but then expect them to go out and vote? Well, apparently some people did. And the craziest thing about what happened yesterday, poll workers weren't even showing up. I think there are going to be lawsuits. I think the lawsuits will win. If Bernie Sanders drops out now, I think that would be, well, it would probably be a mistake. But look, no one really expected him to win at this point anyway, which is surprising because I thought, there was a period where Biden was down and out and I was ragging on him saying, haha, Biden could never win. Who thought he could? I'm so smart. Look at me. I'm Tim Pool. Biden was never the front runner. Boy, was I wrong about that one. Somehow Biden rebounded when the moderates dropped out. So let's first take a look at the general story about what happened. But then I want to show you how the progressives were actually fundraising off of the virus. They were rallying behind it. And a lot of people thought it was going to be a huge benefit to Bernie Sanders because older voters wouldn't show up. Surprise, surprise, Bernie still lost. So the young people don't show up anyway. Don't count on them. But now that they've lost, they're complaining, saying, oh, no, oh, harumph, I say. I must sue you because Bernie is supposed to win, I guess. The Daily Caller reports. Vice President Joe Biden once again took a majority of delegates in 3 states that held their presidential primary elections Tuesday night. Ohio was originally scheduled to hold its primary Tuesday, but Republican Governor Mike DeWine decided to postpone the vote due to coronavirus. Illinois, Florida, and Arizona each went through with their elections. Biden took roughly 60% of the vote in both Florida and Illinois, and also secured a win in Arizona. Florida also sported a boost in voter turnout, despite the coronavirus pandemic. You see? Now they're complaining, saying it's unfair. The coronavirus. Maybe they would claim that the voter turnout would be higher. I'm not buying it. I do want to mention, though, I find it kind of suspect. I'm just saying it. How is it that you can have all of these reports of, there was one where like a fire alarm went off, Florida poll workers weren't showing up. That was reported by the Associated Press. Yet they still had increased voter turnout. We've already seen the numbers flickering in this primary season. And now you want to tell me that voter turnout was up in Florida, a state with a lot of, older people and retirees who went out to vote when they were told they were high at risk? I don't know, man. I find the whole thing weird, but hey, Occam's razor suggests, I guess people really don't like socialism. Florida was the biggest prize of the night, accounting for 219 pledged delegates. Illinois counts for 155 and Arizona has 67. The night further solidifies Biden's already commanding lead in the primary. Ohio is one of 4 states to delay its primary during the coronavirus pandemic. Maryland, Kentucky, and Louisiana all followed suit. Several cities and states across the country have taken drastic measures to force social distancing, from banning sit-down restaurants to encouraging residents not to gather in groups greater than 10. The primaries came as President Donald Trump is bending his administration to insulate the economy against the virus. The stock market lost all of its gains since Trump took office over the past 3 months, and the administration has requested a $1 trillion stimulus bill to get the economy back on track. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin led the move as Peter Navarro led efforts to draft a Buy American executive order that would allow companies to file certain expenses as tax write-offs if they rejoin the American supply chain. Check this out. Joe Biden. Okay, so they just basically show Biden won everything. But boy, did Bernie Sanders get obliterated in Florida. Dude, Bernie ended up with like 22% of the vote in Florida. Biden got like 60%. You want to know why? As we predicted, when Bernie came out and praised Fidel Castro and Cuba's literacy programs, everyone in Florida with family or with personal experience were like, nope. Everyone with experience from Venezuela, nope. And Florida is a hub for many of the people who have fled these countries. So Bernie Sanders is now set to assess his campaign after Tuesday's losses. I wonder if he's going to be dropping out. I can't say that, he will. It's not the first time he said he was going to get, he waited until the next day and then gave a statement where he said he refuses to back down. But at this point, I just do not see a path for Bernie Sanders unless it's involving lawsuits and a contested convention. But see, Bernie already dug himself into a hard position. And I have to wonder, it's such a perfect storm. Bernie took the lead, right? Remember in the polls and the delegate count, Bernie was the front runner. He was doing the best. Biden was out. And then Bernie goes up on stage and says, I think, he was the only one who said this, I think whoever has the most delegates should be the nominee no matter what. And every other politician up there said, no, we should follow the rules of the Democratic convention. It was so darn convenient for knocking out Bernie, because what ends up happening is everyone starts saying, see, Bernie is the only one being fair, that if you win the popular count, you should be the nominee. And then all of a sudden, Biden took over, and now Bernie is forced to abide by what he just said. If you've got the delegates, then it should be you. And he was the only one who said it. If Bernie said, no, if there's a contested convention, then I think we'll play by the rules. But he didn't want to say that. Why? He thought he was going to win. He said, I'm in front. I want to win. If I get the delegates, it's me. And then Biden won South Carolina and then took the lead. And now, what's Bernie going to do? Backpedal? The Hill reports Democratic presidential hopeful Bernie Sanders' campaign manager on Wednesday said that Sanders would take time in the coming weeks to assess his campaign after a slew of primary wins for former Vice President Joe Biden. The next primary contest is 3 weeks away, Sanders' campaign manager Fayez Shakir said in a statement. Senator Sanders is going to be having conversations with his supporters to assess his campaign. In the immediate term, however, he is focused on the government response to the coronavirus outbreak and ensuring that we take care of working people and the most vulnerable. The statement comes hours after Biden won sweeping victories. Yeah, we know that. The wins ensure that Biden will have a nearly insurmountable lead in delegates by the time all of the votes are counted from the latest election. So let me go over the results first. And the first thing I want to show you, for those of you that are fans of Mr. Trump, he has secured his position as the presumptive nominee. Now, I don't think the conventions are actually going to happen. So I think they're just going to say, yeah, we get it. Trump, you're the nominee, right? Normally what happens is once somebody wins the primary, you have the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention. They're big parties. It's actually a lot of fun if you're a Politico. And then they all get up and say, our nominee is so-and-so. So Donald Trump has won. Bill Weld got 1 delegate. Congratulations, Bill. But you needed 1,276 delegates to win the nomination. Trump now has 1,330. Over on the Democratic side, you need 1,991. Bernie has not even cracked 1,000 with 861. We can see Joe Biden at 1,153. At this point, I personally just don't see a path for Bernie moving forward. But hey, let me show you what's going on now. Let's talk a little bit about the election and the coronavirus pandemic. It really does feel like the economy, our way of life, is going to change dramatically, and there's nothing we can do about it. There's a national crisis. I'm hoping we can see people rally together, under the American flag, kind of coming together, figuring out how we solve this problem, realizing we've given too much away to China in the past. And it's now time, because even Bernie said it, that these globalization policies have failed us. And I got much respect for him for a statement on that. China has our manufacturing. This is what we need to be talking about. Now, of course, Election experts expect corona outbreak to drive lawsuits in Dem primaries. If there are some really close races, then that might keep lawyers and judges busy for some time. I don't think there's going to be a lawsuit in Florida. I mean, you've got an older population and he got absolutely crushed. But let me show you this tweet and then we'll come back to the story. Bill Ackman said, Mr. President, the only answer is to shut down the country for the next 30 days, close the borders, tell all Americans that you are putting us on an extended spring break at home with family, keep only essential services open, the government pays wages until we reopen. No one defaults, no one forecloses, a 30-day rent, interest, and tax holiday for all. The shutdown is inevitable, as it is already happening, but not in a controlled fashion, which is extending the economic pain and amplifying the spread of the virus. With exponential compounding, every day we postpone the shutdown costs thousands and soon hundreds of thousands and then millions of lives and destroys the economy. Please send everyone home now. With your leadership, we can end this now. The rest of the world will follow your lead. A global spring break will save us all. I don't know. So apparently, I'm not super familiar with who this guy is. So I saw a tweet from someone. They said he was a billionaire or something. So here's what I can say about this. I would entertain that idea. You've got someone right now telling the president that he's got to close the borders and shut everything down for 30 days. I mean, Trump has wanted secure borders. Plus, we've got this growing pandemic. And I wonder if lighthearted measures, slow measures are only going to make things substantially worse because we're constantly playing catch up. Right now, we're at 6,000 plus infections in the United States, over 200,000 around the world. And there's an extremely high complication and hospitalization rate. To the people who are saying it's like the flu, I want you to go and look up the videos of people collapsing in the streets. And now we really understand why that's been happening. Because people can't breathe. They're not getting oxygen. And they're going out with shortness of breath. And then without oxygen, guess what? They faint. They pass out. So it is serious. I'm not saying this guy is right or wrong. But what I do think we need to recognize is that if our elections are being disrupted by this, and they are, and that's going to drive major lawsuits, Bill Ackman is right. We're seeing this slow roll of changes. The refusal to postpone the Democratic primaries is resulting in more drawn out problems. So I don't know what the answer is. But if we don't postpone, if we don't stop for now and say, we just got to get a hold on the coronavirus so we can figure things out, then we're going to have more lawsuits. This is going to extend well into next year. We're going to see massive economic damage. I don't know if the government can pay everyone's wages or how that works. And I got to say, too, if everybody who's put out of work by this ends up getting paid by the government, I still got to go to work. Hey, that's not fair. I'm kidding, by the way. No, I like what I do. But there are a lot of people who have straight up lost their jobs. There are some things that will never come back. The gig economy, for instance. I know people who have, scheduled contracts for, photo shoots, for video production. When their clients say, we're canceling the shoot, you don't just come back to your job. That deal was done. There's no job to come back to. It's a one-off, right? But for the people who work in the service industry who are being laid off, that shouldn't happen. I mean, obviously, once we're through this, you're going to need to bring people back, right? So it's an interesting idea. What if Donald Trump did say, we're going to shut down the borders until we can get a hold on, coronavirus and figure out what's really going on? What if we jumped ahead of all of this instead of waiting to see how bad it gets and reacting to it, we got extremely proactive. Now, to an extent, we're already doing that. We've got New York saying, shelter in place, the National Guard deployments, and, potentially a massive economic stimulus. But I think there's a real risk if people just keep saying, well, we'll react to it as it comes. It's going to beat us. So it's always going to be one step ahead of us. There's a compromise here. Of course, you're going to see a lot of people in the Bernie Sanders camp claiming that this is proof of, why we need socialism, why we need universal basic income. These are all disingenuous, completely bad faith arguments. An emergency 30-day stipend or stimulus is not universal basic income. A tax credit is not universal basic income. And people are now, I see some people tweeting, it's funny how capitalism always runs to socialism for a bailout. It's like, yeah, you know what? Maybe that's a really good point. Maybe when there are emergencies which require executive authority and immediate action, we do need a government to step in very quickly, temporarily. It's the problem when you try to institute these things permanently. Of course, now we're in a crisis situation. Of course, now we can see the government stepping up because we need executive action. This is why we have the government we do. Think about it for 2 seconds. If you had a government that was just a council and then you face a serious threat, they'd bicker all day and never get anything done. If you have a government that was just a council of elders, for instance, they probably wouldn't have the distributed understanding of what's happening around the country to make the appropriate decisions. And I'm talking about like these countries with like just a party. What we have takes the benefits of several different types of governments. The executive branch exists specifically, or for the most part, in my opinion, or I should just say strongly, for this. The executive branch has a president who can make quick and decisive decisions to help us through a crisis. That is not the same as single party rule, socialist, dictatorship, whatever you want to call it, democratic socialism. This is the president saying, here's what we need, Congress, get it done. And then Congress saying, okay, we're going to get it done, and working together, we have that executive authority. So for now, maybe we do need to implement something a bit more drastic than we're doing. I honestly don't know. I'm absolutely opposed to, on principle, quarantines, curfews, and all these other things. And it's a challenge for us because we are a freedom-loving people, and that is a vulnerability. In an individual level, we love and respect freedom, and we must protect that. On a national scale, we also need to make sure that when there is a crisis, we come together and do what we have to do to make sure our community can survive. If you have too many people who say every man for themselves, then you're in serious trouble. Because when it comes to a major crisis, they say, I don't care what you need, I'm going to do what I need. And that's a problem. Because if they're saying right now, look, we're not going to force anyone to stay home, we just need you to chill out for a little bit, and then people get all angry and go out and party anyway, well, then they're going to have two options. Harsh, lockdown instituted by, enforced by law, or we just let the virus spread and it wreaks havoc on the economy. If you have too many people that are just follow the lead of the party and government, you end up with an authoritarian and permanent regime. And we don't want that either. We need a healthy mix of people who say, I'm going to do what needs to be done right now. You've called on me not to go after 8 p.m. I hear you. Okay, you got it. But keep in mind, the moment this emergency is lifted or within a reasonable amount of time, I demand the expiration of any and all emergency powers granted to the government. There is a threshold of us recognizing we're in this together. And I absolutely respect that. When the governor of New Jersey said, I'm recommending, strongly discouraging, non-essential travel, but we need to do this together, I respected that 100%. Now, I got to admit, it's a little freaky when they say they don't want you going out after 8 p.m. Some people are making it sound like it's mandatory. But you know what? I have to take responsibility, and so does everyone else, that we are in this country together. Now, what's worrying to me is that there are too many people who see this as an opportunity to gain power. So naturally, election experts expect corona outbreak to drive lawsuits, yet we see this story from March 12th. Justice Democrats fundraises off Wuhan virus, says school closures constitute voter suppression. They were already gearing up to use this crisis for their advantage. And now that they lost, predictably, now they're saying there's a potential there's going to be some lawsuits. And I believe it. 100% I believe it. So I don't trust these people that would try to seize power. And that's the scary thing about what Bill Ackman said. While I can entertain the possibility of some more drastic measures, like the government insuring people's salaries, saying, you know what? If you had a way of life and it was disrupted because of the coronavirus, we are going to we're going to now have a government fund. Granted, it's taxpayers. It's not like the money just comes out of nowhere. It's going to result in inflation. There's a lot of problems with this, but the alternative could be worse, a complete economic collapse that we never recover from. I don't know what the right answer is, but I will say I will entertain the possibility of a major government action like, you know what, everyone? We're going to pay you a bunch of money. We're going to pay you your salaries or insure your wages for the next 30 days, and we're shutting down. However, what scares me is when you give them the power, they never want to give it up. So what do you choose? Take the risk because, take the risk on the coronavirus because the risk is greater with the tyrannical government, or take the risk with the government because the coronavirus could be worse. I got to say, man, I think the coronavirus will come and go. And in the end, I think we have to step away from more harsh government regulations and accept we need to do what we can as a community to protect those who are most vulnerable. And we have to be vigilant and make sure the government doesn't try and gain sweeping, overbearing authoritarian controls, which they will never give up. What scares me is if even if we see the coronavirus dissipate, right? You may still see people arguing, no, it's still there. Oh, yes, the only reason you're not seeing it now is because of the government, because of the things we've implemented, in which case it will never end. They'll just say, oh, no, trust us. If you go to your house now, it'll come back. Nah, I'm not okay with that. I'm willing to be reasonable. You have a certain amount of time, 60 days, 90 days. Some of these sound reasonable, but I don't trust the media and I don't trust the government. So we have to make sure that, yes, we'll do what we can to make sure we get through this, but you got to keep your eyes open. They will try and seize power at a moment's notice. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. I will see you all then.